In today's video, we're going to replace the brake pads on the rear of this vehicle. This is a 2007 Ford Freestar. This is a very common configuration. What we have here, this is a front-wheel drive vehicle. So there's no axles to the rear of the vehicle here. We have a caliper piston, which has to be rotated back into the caliper itself. We'll use the tool to do that to make room for the new thicker brake pads. Remove the top off of the brake fluid reservoir. A little tough to see it here in this video. And here it is. We're going to be pushing that caliper piston back into the caliper, and that will drive the fluid level up in the reservoir. We'll top it off after you're done the video. Check the level. We're going to remove our two caliper slide pins, or guide pins as they're sometimes called. Remember, we're kind of looking at this from reverse here, so think about what you're doing counterclockwise to loosen just about everything. And there's one down here. Get that. Want to knock the camera over here. So we're gonna lubricate these pins while we're at this job. Always a good idea to do that whenever you're changing your brake pads out. Lay the caliper on something or tie it up with a tie wrap so as not to put undue pressure on the brake flex hose over here. Now with that off, we can remove the old pads, which aren't in too bad a shape, but I replaced the other caliper on this vehicle, which I will put a link to the video down below. And while I was at it, figured I'd install a new set of pads on this. Your new pads, which are here, will include new spring clips. So we'll take our old spring clips out also. Give a quick cleaning to the area where your new spring clips are going to go on the caliper mounting clamp here. Get some of the crap out of there, and on the caliper where the guide pins are going to go. Now we're going to push the piston back into the caliper to make room for those new brake pads. I recently made a video on using this tool. I will put a link at the bottom of this video down below here if you want to see how to use this tool. You may have to do like I did and stabilize that caliper. It's moving all over the place. You might have seen when I was trying to retract the piston in. Anyway, it's fully retracted, and I'll remove the tool. Remove the slide pins. These boots, they can be a little tight. If they are, you can use a box cutter knife. Be very careful not to cut the boot. But let's just try it without that. Okay, we can spin the boot around. So that's promising. And there you go. That's one. Set that aside. We'll clean that up. And the bottom one. See if it'll spin. Yep. Okay. I replaced this caliper. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I have a video of that too. I'll put the link down below. And there's our other guide pin. Clean the old grease off of our guide pins after we remove the top of the boot, making note which side of the boot went towards the top of the pin. I think these may be, no, they're not universal. Anyway, take it like that. Sacrifice an old glove or something like I did, or preferably a clean paper towel or something. I'm going to take a wire brush and clean that edge in there where the boot goes over the guide pin as well. Anyway, you get the general idea here. Take your guide pin lubricant, put some, actually I'm just gonna, ideally you want to have a tight set of plastic gloves for this, but I don't have any handy, so I'm gonna do it this way. You don't want to go put too much on. I like to put a bit at the bottom, and then it'll get the excess grease will get pushed up towards the top here anyway, and it'll be within the boot, but you don't want to put too much in there on there. Install your slide pins, making sure that the bottom of the boot goes over that ridge right there, and kind of spin them around a bit to move that lubricant around. And then what I do is I take a small screwdriver, see if I have one handy. I guess I'm gonna have to use my box cutter knife, and I kind of keep the lip opened so that a bunch of air doesn't get in that boot. We don't want to compress there. There's no air in there. You can see that slides. Push it back and forth there, but there's not a bunch of air caught in it. I want to see if I'm going to do that again from the bottom here. Oops, sorry about that. So here it is. Push it down and just kind of keep the edge out as you push it on, and then compress it. And then you can see there's not a bunch of air in there. I'm going to install the new sliders for our brake pads, and the springy end, this end here, you're going to point that away from the rotor. This being the rotor here, right there. So in other words, I'm going to put this spring on this side, pointing away from the rotor. And again, now on the inboard side of the rotor, the springy clip will be going that way. When you're installing the inboard brake pad, you want the dowel or protrusion, whatever you want to call it, on the pad, that to line up so that it's seated in that groove in the piston, like that. Otherwise it won't sit flat. See how flat that's sitting there? So I actually had to take my retractor tool and, where's it at? I just took it and just turned it back a little bit because I had it actually retracted. I always put a little bit of the slider pin grease on the spring clips. Makes it easier for the pad to be installed, and I put a little on the tabs on the brake pad itself, and that'll make them slide in a little easier. You might have to mess around with this a bit sometimes because it's a little bit of a knack. You gotta kind of push down on one side of it and then try to keep your spring clip on the other end in place. Kind of move it back and forth a bit like that. Oops, you see what I'm getting at here. There we go. Caliper is now installed back onto the mounting bracket. As you can see in that last video, you got to be a little bit strategic. You got to want to kind of keep a bit of pressure over on that side. So you pull the caliper that way so that you can kind of move it over those protrusions on the inside brake pad. And the other thing you want to keep in mind is that our slider pins are actually flat on this side. And that's why I was kind of messing around with those to get the flat part of the guide pin lined up with the flat part here on the caliper. Anyway, it's on there now. I'm going to tighten up our guide pins. The torque requirements on these guide pin bolts are not that high. They don't have to be all that tight. Unlike the caliper mounting bolts back here, which we did not remove, they require a lot more torque. Now, I'm just going to tighten them up a bit here. A reference, if you have a reference manual for your vehicle, look at the torque specifications, whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to Tighten that one up a bit. Tighten this one up a bit. And then I'm going to apply the brakes and see if these... I'm going to pump the brakes a couple of times, and with a little luck you'll be able to visualize, see the caliper compress on those pads. Hopefully you saw that. And then it's obviously released because I can spin. And I put my high-tech tool, a brake hold down stick that I have, and we can see everything appears to be properly functioning, as I need some leverage to really move this now. Quite a bit. There. So, brake's working anyway. Thanks for watching. Hope that video was helpful. And have a look at your brake fluid level in your reservoir. Make sure it's good.